Before we continue our reading of the Phenomenology of Spirit, I'd like to pause for 5 minutes and ask a question that most readers never stop to ask. Hegel eventually writes a book called The Science of Logic. But what exactly does he mean by the word logic? That sounds bizarre today. Logic is supposed to be about syllogisms, formal proofs, algorithms. Open any logic textbook and you'll find something very different. From Hegel's phenomenological method of tracking settled distinctions of conceptual self-development, you will find, instead, mechanizable instructions for reasoning, formulas that tell you step by step whether an inference is valid. That's what logic usually means. What could a history of consciousness possibly have to do with logic? It turns out, this question only exists because we inherited one very particular understanding of what logic is. And surprisingly, one of the founders of modern logic may actually help us understand Hegel. I will get to that. Open almost any logic textbook. You learn how to test whether an inference is valid. If P, then Q. P, therefore Q. Logic becomes a collection of procedures. A machine could execute them. Nothing genuinely new is learned. This picture fits the algebraic tradition. It also explains why Kant could famously say that logic had been complete since Aristotle. Why? Because logic doesn't create knowledge. It merely preserves truth. Knowledge comes from somewhere else. Simply keeps your reasoning from making mistakes. Its job is to check validity, not to teach you anything new about the world or about truth. That's the wall this video is going to test. That wall has a crack in it, and it comes from inside the very tradition that built it. Gottlob Frege, arguably one of the 3 most important founders of modern logic, did not think logic was empty. For Frege, logic brings knowledge of truth. What exactly that means, he never states with perfect clarity, but it isn't hard to infer. Knowledge of truth, in his view, is knowledge of how to distinguish true propositions from false ones. And here's the key move. For Frege, an inference isn't empty just because it can be run mechanically. A valid inference carries information. It updates a network of conceptual compatibilities and incompatibilities. So the person making the inference isn't just manipulating an empty algorithm, they're also updating their knowledge of truth. Their conceptual scheme gets reorganized in a way that settles a truth stance, one they can now use in the next inference and the one after that. That already breaks the assumption from a minute ago. If logic, even for one of its own founders, is in the business of updating knowledge, then logic is closed and finished was never quite right, even on its own terms. Now Hegel begins to look much less strange. For Hegel, logic is not the study of empty forms. It is the history of reason settling itself. Each conceptual achievement becomes the platform for the next one. Each settlement reorganizes what counts as compatible, what counts as contradictory, what future thought can inherit. That is surprisingly close to Frege's intuition that logic carries conceptual content forward. The difference is that Hegel turns those settlements into a historical process. Reason doesn't merely preserve its conclusions, it transforms itself through them. So Hegel's use of the word logic is not nearly as alien as it first appears. He certainly goes far beyond Frege. Contradiction, dialectical development, historical consciousness, those are genuinely Hegelian ideas. But the basic intuition that logic is about the progressive settlement of conceptual content already has powerful allies inside modern logic itself.